The Houston Texans have to improve their offensive line, but how do they do it? Who do they do it with? And who can they even draft? That player's got to be available in the first round of the 2025 NFL draft. Let's talk about it here on the channel. Welcome into the channel. I'm Cody Stoots. Let's talk some Texans. Let's talk about the big uglies. And I say it affectionately up front. The offensive linemen, the Houston Texans, were atrocious along the offensive line last year. They made changes to the offense, getting rid of Bobby Slowick, getting rid of Chris Stroud for the offensive line coach, brought in Nick Caley, the new offensive coordinator, brought in Cole Popovich, promoted Cole Popovich from assistant offensive line coach to offensive line coach. But all of that doesn't matter if they don't have five dudes to run out there to block for C.J. Stroud. There's plenty of offensive linemen in this upcoming draft. We'll talk about the first round possibilities for the Houston Texans in this video. And I'll say right up front, I do very much feel like there needs to be additional bodies in the offensive line room. The additions of Laken Tomlinson, Cam Robinson, and Ed Ingram do not do enough to make me feel good about where the Houston Texans are as an offensive line. That's not totally enough for me. So a first-round investment, or I'll put that "or" in there, or multiple day 2, day 3 investments on the offensive line. Look, the Texans only have a handful of picks this year. They don't have some long laundry list of picks like they've had in previous years. They just have a handful of picks. They've got other things they need to address as well. It can't all be offensive linemen, but if you go O-lineman early, it gives you a little bit of playing room with those other picks. Let's talk about the offensive linemen that could, should, would be available for the Houston Texans. And the order I'm going to go in is I'm going to go down Daniel Jeremiah's top 50 in reverse order. Offensive linemen that should be or could be first-round picks, and will the Houston Texans take that swing on those offensive linemen? Could they get the chance to take that swing on those offensive linemen? Let's start with number 41 on NFL Network, Daniel Jeremiah's top 50. How about the big fella who played a lot of tackle for the Buckeyes, but ultimately ended up playing guard a lot for the Ohio State University, and that is Donovan Jackson. Now, Jackson is not for sure a first-round talent, but he could sneak himself into the first round, especially if some offensive linemen start sneaking off the board early on. So not quite a first rounder, but a top 50 talent for Daniel Jeremiah. So a guy that's worth talking about here for the Houston Texans. Now, what would Donovan Jackson do if the Texans drafted him at 25th overall? Well, he'd start at guard, more than likely. Probably the right guard spot, but I don't think it's out of the question that he would start at left guard. And again, Jackson is a player that it says guard tackle on the screen. He's going to play guard in the NFL level. He was fine as a tackle. It was sort of a necessity thing that the Buckeyes put him there, but he's ultimately going to be a guard. And reading about him and learning about him, and the one thing Daniel Jeremiah talked about was, hey, he can pick up stunts. He didn't have as much problem picking up stunts as some other linemen did. Lord knows the Houston Texans could use a lineman that picks up stunts. What's the top end for him? Well, the Chargers, I guess, at 22 would be a team that would be a little bit of surprise to take Donovan Jackson. Not only is it probably a little early for him at 22, but the Michigan man, Jim Harbaugh, taking a Buckeye, that would be a little weird, wouldn't it? But 22 is kind of where I'd see the high point for Donovan Jackson. The low end for him is second round. And could he be there at 58 when the Houston Texans are selecting in the second round as they're currently slated to do? He certainly could. And if you went with another position in the first round, say wide receiver, and ended up with Donovan Jackson as the 58th overall pick, you could do a whole hell of a lot worse when it comes to offensive linemen. But first on the board, 41st on Daniel Jeremiah's top 50, Donovan Jackson from the Ohio State University. Coming up next, 39th on the top 50 for Daniel Jeremiah. How about the duck, quack, quack, Josh Connerly Jr., who visited with the Houston Texans this week? I say tackle and guard because he played a little guard at the Senior Bowl. He was one of the top tackle prospects to make it out there to the Senior Bowl in Mobile, Alabama. He played a lot of tackle, but a little bit of guard. He's probably best suited as a tackle at the NFL level. Now, the top end nastiness for Connerly, it's probably not there, but he's smooth enough, athletic enough, and takes care of business enough to warrant consideration as a first-round pick. Now, how high could he end up? Well, 14 to Indianapolis might be a little bit of an overdraft, but the Colts desperately need some offensive line help if they don't get a tight end. And again, we're just talking about the top end of where these guys could end up. The low end is into the second round for the Oregon Ducks left tackle. And there's maybe a thought, and I was reading a little bit more about Connerly, that he might need a little bit of seasoning before he's ready to take over. And with the Texans having offensive tackle solutions this year, Connerly may not totally fit unless they do believe he could play guard right away for them and then ultimately kick out to tackle once Cam Robinson's time with the Texans are done. Remember, Cam Robinson, Laken Tomlinson, and Ed Ingram all have 1 year on their deals. Ed Ingram has 1 year left. Robinson and Tomlinson signed 1 year deals. So while you think about offensive linemen, think about them for 2025. That's the next season the Texans play, obviously, and they need players that can help them in 2025. But also think of them for 2026 and beyond, and Connerly as your tackle of the future at one of the tackle spots. It's not the worst investment. It just has a weird 2025 investment to it. So Josh Connerly Jr. from Oregon. Next up in our look at where these offensive linemen could be headed is 37th overall on Daniel Jeremiah's top 50. Not a player that I would draft if I was the Houston Texans, but Josh Simmons, the tackle from the Ohio State University. Now, Simmons transferred to Ohio State, got a lot done in his first year, was really good to start this past season, and then tore his patellar tendon in his leg and missed the rest of the year. Now, torn patellar tendons typically are injuries that lead to players having a regressed level of talent once they return, if they return. It is not often that players get back to the same level of player that they are. However, Simmons' athletic profile prior to the injury, the success that he had prior to the injury, it makes him an intriguing player for some teams. That's why on the top end, I put him 11th to the 49ers. San Fran has their left tackle right now in Trent Williams. But Trent Williams is not long for the NFL world. The franchise left tackle for the 49ers is probably going to hang it up here pretty soon, and having Simmons to take over for Trent Williams would be a useful situation for the 49ers. Now, the low end for Simmons is the second round because there's concerns about the health. The health for Simmons is a big concern, and if teams are turned off by a torn patellar tendon, which initially was reported as an ACL injury, but it ultimately was a torn patellar tendon. If teams are turned off by the torn patellar tendon, he could find himself tumbling out of the first round and into the second round. There's also some whispers about character concerns. Todd McShay was the first one I saw to bring this up, saying that teams that he talked to were a little worried that when they pour into Simmons, they may not get the same level of output from Simmons when it comes to his attitude and his approach to football. So that's something that's lingering and could be hanging around here as something that could have Simmons tumbling down the draft board. I still wouldn't take him in the second round. Again, I don't love players coming off of patellar tendon injuries. It is just something that for the Texans who need these early picks that they make, first round, second round, third round, to contribute in 2025, torn patellar tendon doesn't allow him to contribute in 2025. So There's a tackle for you. We've got 3 more players that should be first rounders in Daniel Jeremiah's top 50 for offensive linemen. Talk about them here in a moment as we go through some of the comments here quickly. Good to see you in here, Jake. Appreciate you for jumping in, Panda. Already a month with memberships. That's right. Memberships are available for the channel. Your viewing experience doesn't change if you're not a member, but if you are a member, you get great perks like the custom emojis that you can see in the chat, as well as early access to some videos. And obviously, members who sign up at the highest level, they're going to get even more perks. But again, if you don't want to be a member, that's fine. Your thumbs up on the video, liking, subscribing to the channel is plenty. Members do get some great perks, and we'll have some member-only videos before the draft get going as well. And of course, that early access. Rich Boy, good to see you. Not sure says, I haven't heard you talk about Wyatt Milam. Milam will be in a video in the future. He's a tough study because some people believe he can play guard. I didn't like what I saw at the Senior Bowl. He's a career tackle, but we'll talk about Milam in a future video when we go over day 2 offensive lineman for the Texans. Not sure says he thinks Milam is the best run blocker in the draft. Well, there might be some contenders for that title. Brian says still need a wide receiver. Certainly. That's why you got a round 2 pick and 2 round 3 picks. You could use that at wide receiver if you take that offensive lineman early. Good to see you, HDAV Traveler, Space Age. Appreciate you for jumping in. He loves Donovan Jackson. Good to see you, Jonathan. Benji Banzai. Cody, hope life is treating you well. Love the content you've been putting out. Benji, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Appreciate everybody watching the content that I'm putting out. And then a different Benji says, how the F can you say his top end is 14? Well, because the Colts need an offensive tackle. That's probably the highest he would go. Panda nailed it. Good to see Patrick in here. Texas Speed, good to see you. Landry is not a fan of this stream. Landry hates offensive linemen. He does not like offensive linemen, but I do. So we'll talk plenty about them. Texas Speed asks a good question that we'll get to here in just a minute. Good to see you, Diablo. Good to see you, Darth. And good to see you, H-Town Red. Does it really make sense, Cody, getting another corner in this draft if any are available? Yeah, because your number 3 corner is Ronald Darby, and he's only on a 1-year deal, so that's something to think about. Now, I want to show you something. We'll get back to the top 3 potential first rounders that the Texans could end up drafting, but I want to let you know the stickers are in. We got a Houston football sticker for you. We've got S&L stickers for you. We've got a brand new Era of Good Vibes sticker. It's hard to see in the light, but Era of Good Vibes sticker. We've got an Eat Good, Sleep Good, Be Good sticker for you. And 2 stickers that I think people are really going to end up liking a whole heck of a lot. A limited edition, thanks to Landry Locker, a Damn It Bobby sticker, as well as an Angry Cody sticker. So I'll be getting you the information on how to get the stickers. Ultimately, what we'll probably do is a Google form and have it fill out that way, and then I'll send them out. There's no charge for the stickers. I send them out. I put the stamp on there myself. I address them myself. I even bought, little Coke bags, for lack of a better term, to make sure the stickers don't get wet if there is inclement weather in their travel to you. So we'll tell you how to get the stickers this week. We'll set up a Google form. You'll fill it out, and then I'll send the stickers out. So let's talk some more about offensive linemen here. Now, again, we've gone through backwards from these offensive linemen that should be first rounders the Texans could draft, backwards on Daniel Jeremiah's top 50. So we started with Donovan Jackson, who was number 41. Then we went to Josh Connerly, who was number 39. Josh Simmons, number 37. Number 31 on Daniel Jeremiah's top 50. Kelvin Banks Jr., one of my favorite players in the NFL draft. Banks was a 3-year starter at left tackle for the Longhorns. He is big. He's still growing. He's only going to be 21 years old when a team drafts him. There's a lot to like about Banks. He held his own in the SEC. He took care of business when he was there at Texas. He was a tentpole player. He was one of the guys that held everything together for the Longhorns. I still do not understand how he's even being whispered as anything but a top 15 pick. I could see him going as high as number 9 to the New Orleans Saints, and the latest he'd go is number 26 to the LA Rams, just because the Rams have some future tackle situations that they need to adjust, and they could play Banks at guard right away. Now, for the Houston Texans, if he's there at 25, turn the card in, run it up. Don't pick up the phone. Don't listen to trade negotiations. If Kelvin Banks Jr. is available at 25, make the selection. What Banks can do for you in year one is play guard. He can play guard. A lot of people believed he was going to be better suited as a guard because of shorter arms, but the arms aren't as short as like your typical guard arms. But Banks can play guard for you in 2025. He can improve the offensive line. And then when Cam Robinson moves on at the end of his 1 year with the Houston Texans, you slide this bad mamma jamma over to left tackle. I love Kelvin Banks Jr. in this NFL draft. I'd be very surprised if he's not at worst an average player. I certainly could see where he doesn't reach top end potential, but I really feel good about his potential in the NFL as a player you can plug in from day one at a couple of different positions and long-term put him at your left tackle spot and be comfortable with that player at left tackle for you in the long run. I really like Kelvin Banks. I don't believe he's going to be there at 25 because this feels like the type of player that the NFL is going to be higher on and the draft nicks are going to be a little bit lower on. And as I mentioned, Daniel Jeremiah has him as the 31st player in his top 50. So Kelvin Banks Jr., who also does barbecue food reviews on his social media channels, which kind of moves him up my board a little bit. 31st on Daniel Jeremiah's top 50. Chances to make it to the Texans, I'd say slim. Now, 2 more players in the top 50 to talk about here. Both of them interior offensive linemen. But I do want to note, as we talk about potential first-round offensive lineman or first-round offensive lineman, I didn't do Will Campbell or Armand Minbu in this exercise because I don't believe Will Campbell, the tackle from LSU, or Armand Minbu, the tackle from Missouri, are going to get anywhere close to the Houston Texans. They're probably not getting past 14 with the Indianapolis Colts. And if they do get past 14, everybody and their mom might be trying to trade up to 15 to get them. I wouldn't necessarily trade up for those players to 15, but if they got closer and closer, I'd take a little swing at that, but no Minbu, no Campbell in this exercise. Number 24 on Daniel Jeremiah's top 50. Remember, Daniel Jeremiah, the top 50 players in this upcoming draft. Number 24 is a player that impressed the hell out of me at the Senior Bowl, and we've probably watched him play none of his college career live, and that is guard/center. I just call him interior offensive lineman, Gray Zabel. This guy was awesome at the Senior Bowl. Player after player after player wanted a crack at the NDSU standout on the interior offensive line, and Zabel held his own time and time again. Now, he played at a lower level of competition against lower consistent levels of competition, but he played tackle for the Bison. He's not going to play tackle at the NFL level. He's going to play guard. And when you look at him, you look at the athleticism, you can definitely see a player that could have some success at guard. Zabel checked all the offseason boxes that he could. Hey, play who you play who's on your schedule. And then he had to go to the Senior Bowl, beat up on some other draft picks in this upcoming draft. He did just that. He had to test well in the off-season portion of the testing. He did just that. He's going to interview really well. He seems like a really smart and heady offensive player. He's got a great personality. Now, here's the thing for Gray Zabel as you kind of look at him and think about him. He is not in the prototype of what the Houston Texans typically draft. They have drafted one non-Power 4, Power 5 player in Nick Caserio's tenure as the general manager. They drafted Tank Dell, but ultimately UH ended up in the Power 4, Power 5 situation. But they've only ever drafted one player that played at a lower level or group of 5 or lower level situation for the Houston Texans, and that was Tank Dell. And I feel like if Tank Dell hadn't been in Houston, maybe he doesn't get drafted. It helped a little bit for Tank Dell to have been right in the Texans' backyard. So Zabel would be breaking tradition for the Houston Texans. They have not drafted players with his profile before, playing at a lower level of football. But breaking tradition from what they have done, well, what they have done has got them to where they are right now on the offensive line. Kenyon Green was thought to be a can't-miss, high-floor type of football player, and we found out that the floor associated with Kenyon Green was much lower than we all expected. So again, Zabel could be a day one starter for you on the interior of the offensive line. He could even challenge for center snaps. He played center in high school. I think in a pinch he played center at NDSU. He was their emergency center for the team as well. He told me at the combine, hey, playing center, it's like riding the bike. You don't ever forget how to do it. You still just snap the ball and go block people. So Gray Zabel, 24th on Daniel Jeremiah's top 50. If you get the 24th best player in the draft at 25, well, it'll be a pretty nice pick there. Top end for Zabel, Cincinnati at 17, maybe a little higher, but they couldn't quite place the team. The low end for him, I don't know how he gets past Kansas City at 31. If he gets past Kansas City at 31, he damn sure is not getting past the Philadelphia Eagles at 32. So Gray Zabel, guard/center from NDSU. Now, you're wondering to yourself, well, Cody, who's the last guy? You told me there are going to be 6 guys. Who's the last guy? Who's that final player? The top offensive lineman the Texans will have a crack at in the 2025 NFL Draft, according to Daniel Jeremiah. Number 20 on Daniel Jeremiah's top 50 list. Who is that player? You're wondering to yourself. Well, that player is Alabama guard Tyler Booker. This guy is the prototype for what the Texans look for. He was a consistent, solid, sometimes excellent starter along the offensive line. He ended up as a captain. He was talked about from a leadership standpoint as the Will Anderson of the offensive line at Alabama. He said Will Anderson taught him how to be a leader from a couple of years ago when they overlapped with the Crimson Tide. And Daniel Jeremiah is about the highest on Booker of any of the draft people around. Booker's mentality is exactly what the Texans approach. He's all football all the time. He says all the right things. He understands football at a high level. When you hear him talk about it, the intricacies, the success that he had at Alabama, the program that he had, the success at, it all checks the boxes for the Texans when you think about the type of player. Is he worthy of the 25th overall pick? I believe if the Texans pick him at 25, they think he can be a day one starter at right guard and start there for a very, very long time. That's what I believe they're saying. How do they get him? Well, he's got to get past the Chargers at 22. Then they should have a crack at him. Again, Daniel Jeremiah, very high on Booker. Some of the things about Booker that scare people is he's probably only situated for a certain style of offense because of his athletic profile. He's not the most athletic player at the guard position. Now, he did a little bit better at his pro day than he did at the scouting combine, but there's still questions about his athleticism. But if he doesn't have to go out there and consistently use his athleticism, if you just let him go out there and block guys in a phone booth, to use the scouting term, he goes out there and he mauls people. He beats people up. He's physical. He's tough. He's a guy that eventually should be a leader for your team. He talked about leadership and he said, I want to be a leader one day, but I know I walk in here and I'm not going to lead a guy that's 30-something years old, has 2 kids, a mortgage, and has been in the NFL for a long time. So he understands that he's got to grow into that responsibility. I really like Booker. I feel like he's the perfect pick in a trade back for the Texans. 25 feels like it might be a little rich for him, but ultimately I could see the Texans, just based on the profile of this player, making the selection at 25, turning in the card, and drafting from Alabama guard Tyler Booker. And again, 20th on Daniel Jeremiah's top 50, higher than Gray Zabel, Kelvin Banks, Justin Simmons, Josh Connolly, and Donovan Jackson. What say you? Tyler Booker, you thumbs up or thumbs down on him? Let me know. Now, Booker, he met with the Texans at the Combine. He said it was a great meeting. He really enjoyed that. Haven't seen if Booker got the nod and made the visit for the Texans, but a lot of times those visits, they use them to get to know the guys a little bit more. Pretty easy to get to know Booker. You can go ask Will Anderson about it and find out what you need from him, and you talk to him at the Combine. So that's something intriguing. Did catch this today. Now, Caleb Johnson is a running back from Iowa. We haven't seen a lot of players do this when they visit the Texans. We haven't seen a lot of players do this, but they put on their social medias. I see it most with Cowboys players. Put on their social media they're visiting with the team. Caleb Johnson is the first team player that I've seen really do it with the Texans. And Saucy XX on, or Saucy BTWW on Twitter. Let me give him the shout out here. He grabbed this from Caleb Johnson's Instagram. And on the Instagram, you could see Big Gray Zabel there in Caleb Johnson's video. So the Iowa running back in town actually lets us know that Gray Zabel in town visiting with the Houston Texans. So I thought that was a really good job by Saucy BTWW to catch that in Caleb Johnson's video on his social media. So Gray Zabel getting the visit for the Houston Texans. Couple of comments, questions, joys, and concerns for you. We'll fire it away to Q&A time. I'll catch up on some of the stuff you guys had to say as I was talking about offensive linemen. We'll answer your questions here before 10:30. We turn this thing over to Landry Locker. Probably won't go to exactly 10:30. Couple of members at 1 month BG. Appreciate you for being a 1 month member. Dietology with the super chat. If Emeka Egbuka, the Ohio State wide receiver, is at 25, does Stroud influence over O-line? CJ Stroud does not determine what this team does in the draft and should not determine what this team does in the draft. He might like Emeka Egbuka, but he needs to stay upright. Now, if you're drafting Emeka Egbuka at 25 and you want to go and invest in the offensive line a little bit later, be my guest. I'd be happy to see what the Texans can do from that standpoint. But CJ Stroud should not have any sort of big say in what happens with this draft pick at 25 or any of the draft picks for that matter. Dietology, appreciate you for the super chat. So a couple of things to get to. Panda says, just call it a Ziploc bag. It is a zip, but it's not like just a baggie. It's a baggie. Bradley says, I don't see Banks falling, sadly. I don't see him falling either. Kurt Mintz asks, genuine questions, are there any rookies that don't have short arms? Feel like every prospect's problem. Well, it's not that big of a problem for guards, but the short arm conversation has popped up a ton with these offensive linemen. The combine measurements were a little off, so teams will have to kind of figure out what they trust or what they don't trust from the process. But pro days, Senior Bowl were a little bit different from a measurement standpoint. Primetime says, is it just me or I want a player that's going to flat out play the position he's drafted for? I certainly understand not moving a guy around. I get it. I get that being a concern and not wanting to deal with that. I certainly get that element of it. So you draft a tackle, you want to play tackle. You draft a guard, you want to play guard. You draft a right guard, you want him to play right guard. Vice versa. So I certainly understand the fear there. What would you do if Kelvin Banks Jr. and Colston Loveland were there? Who are you picking? Oh, boy. Trying to make me pick between two of my favorite children in this upcoming draft. I would probably pick Colston Loveland and figure out the offensive line situation a little bit later. I'd pick the Michigan tight end. JJ Stagg, if you put a list of your top picks at O-line for the Texans 1 through 5, that will happen, JJ. That will happen. That'll be on Houston Football. I'll do my 7 players that I like for the Texans, where they should be drafted, why I like them. We'll talk about that before the draft gets here. I'll do it in video form as well. Good to see you, DQ. Diablo Valdez says, Kelvin Banks Jr. or Tyler Warren, the Penn State tight end. Well, I'd take Warren. That's my guy. I love Tyler Warren. I feel like he's going to be awesome in the NFL. Steve says, Cody staying up late tonight. Yeah, it took a little time getting stuff squared away, and I figured, a live video is better than throwing it on recorder. Get to hang out with everybody and get everybody kind of primed and ready for Landry at 10:30. Cody's fiending for some offensive linemen. Just add some more bodies, I'd love 2. I get 2 if they invest early. If they wait till later, and they grab 2 guards in the middle rounds, I'm in. Did CJ have something to do with the tank pick? Yes, but Nick Caserio kind of shot that down as like CJ doesn't make the picks. He didn't say it that exactly, but CJ doesn't make the picks. I know CJ was a big fan of him. But CJ didn't make the picks. Patrick, I knew this was coming from you. Primetime likes Gray Zabel from North Dakota State University. Engineer says CJ's a bit of a wide receiver evaluator. He did like Ricky Pearsall last year, it seems. So, pick his brain, I guess, but he didn't make the picks. Rich Boy Jay is a big fan of Tyler Booker from Alabama. John likes the dog that Zabel's going to bring to the table. Primetime says Booker's the only lineman I would like because of knowing the exact position he'll be playing. I don't want to draft a player you questioning where to play him at. I certainly understand that. You're describing the way Kendrick Green looks. All right, come on now. Sideline Sarah wants Tyler Booker from Alabama. Steve's a Banks or a Zabel guy. I'm a Banks guy, but I'd take Zabel. I'd take Booker. I don't love any of the other offensive linemen that we talked about. I'd wait till day 2 and go get my guy Tate Ratledge. Albert says, with how terrible Nick has been at drafting offensive linemen, he should stay away from the tradition of not drafting small school players. I like Gray Zabel. So that's one of those things. They haven't drafted small school guys, group of 5 guys. And so that would break tradition for them if they went with Gray Zabel. And that might be a good thing for the Texans. Look, Nick Caley and Cole Popovich clearly are going to have some help in figuring out exactly what this team needs from an offensive line standpoint and putting together this offensive line. So you would hope that they bring over a little bit more juice to the evaluation process that Caserio was missing and led to him making some mistakes there in his offensive line evaluation. Kenyon Green in the first round, Juice Scruggs in the second round. Those 2 things have not played out. Texas Speed says, I hope we go O-line at 25. Engineer knows that Colston Loveland, the Michigan tight end, is a game changer, and Brandon wants the Texans to get Omarion Hampton from North Carolina. Man, Joe Mixon clone. A lot of people putting the Joe Mixon on Hampton, and let me tell you, if you got another Joe Mixon, man, 2 Joe Mixons, it's way better than 1 Joe Mixon. And one of them being a young Joe Mixon, love that. Doyle's a member. He says, just get Zabel and call it a day. Nothing like a big-ass farm kid who knows how to work. Yeah, so he got some, I guess it was NIL money, and he ended up investing it in the farm or buying a piece of a farm or something about farms and NIL money and stuff like that. So he's a good old-fashioned country boy, that Gray Zabel. BG says, I want linemen that are psycho for blocking for their QB. Yeah, I also want guys that go fight the other team when the QB gets hit. Remember the Green Bay game when nobody went and fought the Packers players after they hit Stroud on a big scramble? I want 5 guys to go out there and try to fight the opposing team when they get anywhere near the quarterback. Engineer says the Astros are disgusting to watch this year. Amen, brother. Bubba Homeschool, trade number 25 and next year's first and second for Tyler Warren. Nah, I mean, you got to be smart with your picks. I wouldn't trade a future first for him. But if he started to slip a little bit, I'd dip into that extra capital they have on day 2 next year. which is an additional second-round pick, and I'd try to go from 25 up there like 13 and go get him. That's what I would do. I don't believe the Texans would do that. Dietology says, Banks in the first round, trade up in the second for Emeka Egbuka, trade back in the late second for running back or another offensive lineman. You're using a lot of draft capital there. It's worth noting the Texans have all their selections next year in addition to a second and fourth round pick next year. So if they want to dip into the next year's draft class for this one, you can. I don't feel like Egbuka is the type of guy you trade up for. I just don't know that he's that much better than some of the linemen, or excuse me, some of the wide receivers that would be available to you at 58. So I just don't know that he's that good that you would do that. But there's worse ideas. It's not a bad idea. There's worse ideas. Albert bringing over the S&L Honka. Maybe adding another Honka is what this offensive line needs. Yeah, maybe. Maybe. Good to see you, Pawn Shop. Good to see you, Mr. Bo on the top. Appreciate you jumping in. Bradley wants Texas center Jake Majors late in the draft. Yeah, Majors should be a middle to late day 3 pick. So that's a good player to kind of target in the later rounds. I know he didn't talk with the Texans when he was at the combine when I asked him, but he has since visited with them, according to Aaron Wilson. I don't know if that was a Zoom visit or if that was a 30 visit where he came in. But I know he's since talked to the Texans in the draft process. Brandon says, what? I missed 30 minutes of Stoots? The beautiful thing is there's the rewind button. You can go catch it up on it. Diablo says, I didn't like the halfback pick at 25, but Landry's making me go with Amarion Hampton. You can do a lot worse than drafting the next Joe Mixon at 25, especially when there's not been a consistent number 2 running back in this organization. Gosh, basically ever, it feels like. Albert says, it seems like every time the Texans draft an O-lineman, the draft analyst seems to say they never saw that player going so early. That has happened a few times for the Texans. So Kenyon Green probably went a lot earlier than most people thought. Juice Scruggs went earlier than most people thought. Patterson, I feel like, went about where he was supposed to go. Yeah, that's Gavo says, or Gavo, or Avo, maybe the G silent. Could you see Caleb Johnson, the Iowa running back, fall to 79 after the combine? It's not crazy to think about Johnson at 79. You just need to find, like I always say this, like if the Texans pick at X, you need to find X minus 1 amount of players to go in front of him. Like, are there 78 players that I could see come off the board ahead of Caleb Johnson? Absolutely. Are there other running backs? Like if Trey Henderson from Ohio State, Quinshon Judkins from Ohio State, if they snuck into the second and they went off the board, then you're talking about Johnson as sort of the next guy up. I just don't know that like the 5th running back is coming off the board at 79. That doesn't feel like that's exactly what would happen in this draft. So I would say unlikely, but possible. I don't believe we have a first for 2026. Now, what would lead you to believe that? The Texans, I mean, am I missing something here? I mean, they got their pick for the first round next year. Benji Man Banks. It's Kelvin Banks Jr. from Texas. Tackle. Running back Trey Henderson from Ohio State. Running back Quinshon Judkins from Ohio State. Wide receiver Kyle Williams from Washington State. Miami tight end Elijah Arroyo. Double running backs Landry, and I love it. This was your draft? This is a crazy draft. How'd you get all these players? That's like 4 top 50 guys. We will see Kaylee's fingerprints on this draft. Certainly. And look, here's another thing about Tyler Booker. If they draft Booker, they are telling us what type of running scheme they're going to run. If they draft Booker, they're going to run a gap power scheme because that's what he's set for. That's what he's built for. They're going to change from what they have been running, which is that zone system that the Shanahan tree usually uses. Engineer says, I would trade up for Golden Loveland or Tetaroa McMillan, the wide receiver from Arizona, if they were within a shooting range. Yeah, it's all those players could very realistically go to Denver at 20 and the Chargers at 22. So you'd have to jump up there. So 15, 16. I don't know that Cincinnati wants to move back, but if they moved back to save themselves a little bit of money, maybe they could do that. Zeke Rock says, give me Willie Lampkin late in the draft. Make him your Jeff Saturday. So Willie Lampkin is a tiny offensive lineman from North Carolina. I say tiny in that he checks in under 6 feet tall. He's 5'11". He did not get invited to the NFL scouting combine, which was a bit annoying to some of the draftniks. Lampkin was at the Senior Bowl. He kicked some ass in the Senior Bowl. He's never let his size be a big issue. You could do a lot worse. There's definitely some want to. I do feel like Lampkin's going to ultimately be a 7th rounder or undrafted because the NFL just can't get away from the size. Engineer also likes Jared Wilson, the center from Georgia. If we get him and Tate Ratledge later and spend the first 2 rounds in skill positions, that'd be nice. I don't know if Wilson totally fits. He's maybe more athlete than power. Ratledge fits, though, man. He's nasty. I like Tate Ratledge. 3 years starting at right guard for the Georgia Bulldogs. What more could you ask for? And by the way, 2 sacks allowed in the 3 years that he started for the Bulldogs. Ratledge can get it done. Stingray, there will be plenty of weapons to be drafted in day 2 if they go lineman early, and if they want to draft a weapon in round 1, be my guest. You just need to draft the lineman there in day 2. Good thing we have a fill-in at left tackle. We need that left tackle from Miami in next year's draft. Nav P says that. I don't know anything about him. I haven't looked at next year's draft, but, let's. It does feel like it might be a better tackle draft next year based on just how kind of crappy the tackle draft has been this year. Dietology. Can you explain why Donovan Edwards went from cover of an NCAA game to nobody wanting him? Yeah, Donovan Edwards had a really disappointing past season for Michigan and was not awesome in the draft process by any means. And he went from sort of a household running back name. I know a lot of fantasy football players were, dynasty players were drafting him ahead of time, expecting him to come into the league and tear some things up. He might be an undrafted guy. Like, it just didn't ultimately ended up not looking very good at Michigan. They had other guys that played better than him. And I wonder if a couple of years ago, he was just a product of a really good offensive line. But it never turned the corner into excellence for Donovan Edwards. It's very strange. Very strange. Brandon asks, Stoots, have you done any looking into Holland Pierce? So I did do some light looking into Pierce and trying to learn a little bit more about him. In the first scouting report I read about him, said that he is a for sure right tackle, played at Rutgers. He's a big human being, man. He's big, 6'8", almost 350. He's an intriguing player, and maybe you don't want to put him in a box and say he can only be a right tackle, but a player like that with those type of profiles, especially when you've got a player who's a larger tackle already on the roster in Trent Brown, drafting a guy like Holland Pierce from Rutgers, on day 3 sometime would be an intriguing move because, well, he's going to get projected as a guy like Trent Brown, and Trent Brown's on your team. So Holland Pierce, who's going to be a bigger lineman, maybe could learn something from Trent Brown if he indeed ends up on the Houston Texans. Engineer asks, thoughts on Ozzy Trapilo? Big boy might be a future starter. So Ozzy is a tackle from Boston College. Should be a day 2 selection. And again, another big fella. 6'8", just over 300 pounds. Got a little bit more athleticism to him than a guy like some of the other bigger guys that are there. He's profiling a lot as a right tackle as I read about him and look into him a lot more. But he's an intriguing player. He doesn't have he didn't have a spot. He didn't have a spot in 2025 for the Texans. He definitely has a spot in 2026 if you're doing some shuffling with the tackles. But I just don't know if he fits totally what the Texans would want in 2025 because it doesn't feel like there's any way he's playing guard. Unless they're going to have a 6'8" guard, which, I mean, you could do a lot worse. But he's going to be probably a right tackle, though. You know, if you told me you trust him to play left tackle, I wouldn't sneeze at it. Diablo asks, have you seen Nick Nash, the wide receiver from San Jose State? I think he can play ball, and it's like 6'3". I wouldn't mind him as a mid-late round steal. So Nash is not going to go in the first 2 days, so not in the first 3 rounds. But he should be a guy that right there in the 4th, 5th round range, because of the production that he put together at San Jose State and just some of the polished aspects to his game. Like, he's got some stuff that's a thumbs up to his game while not having some sort of, elite aspect to his game. So you're going to have to really bet on, he's a bigger player. He had success at a smaller level, and you're really going to have to bet on a projection and him staying as good as he is. I just don't know if the athletic profile is there for Nick Nash to be consistently successful. Trevor Sycamore was surprised when I called out Trapilo for his short arms, like less than 33 inches. Yeah, so that's always the thing is like, was that the combine measurement for him? Was that the pro day measurement? Are they actually short? Who knows? Who knows? Sycamore is one of my favorite draft guys, though. The NFL Stock Exchange is definitely one of my favorites. Engineer says, on Pro Football Focus, I was able to get Colston Loveland at 25, Trey Henderson at 58, Ratledge and Kyle Williams on the later rounds. If this is remotely possible, sign me up. I fear not, though. It's so funny you say this. It's so funny that you present that exact draft because I want to show you the mock draft that I did for Houston football that I talked about on Houston football. Is literally that draft. It's Kelvin Banks, Trey Henderson, Kyle Williams, Tate Ratledge, a couple of defenders there on the back end for D'Amico Ryans, and Jackson Hall as a blocking tight end. Like that's exactly what I did on the Pro Football Focus mock draft machine. So it's funny you did that. Would you trade a second for a proven young, good wide receiver in the league? I mean, yeah, but we talked about this on S&L today, which we do each and every day at 4 p.m. Talked about this on S&L. Who is it? Like, who's the guy that's ready to get traded and that you would trade a second for? And could I trade a future second? Do I have to trade a second this year? Because like I looked through the top receivers last year, and none of these guys are getting traded. Like, no, Chase, Jefferson, Thomas, London, St. Brown, Judy, Neighbors, Lamb, Bowers, McConkey, McBride, and Jigba, Kittle, Wilson, McLaurin, Sutton, no. Like, A.J. Brown's probably not getting traded. He's expensive. Devontae Adams just signed with the Rams. Zay Flowers ain't getting traded. I mean, Jacoby Myers. You want to give up a second for Jacoby Myers? I don't. I don't want to give up a second for Jacoby Myers. So, let's keep going down the list. Darnell Mooney. No thanks. The only one that I'd be intrigued with would be George Pickens. George Pickens would be a name to think about, but there's a lot of extra there with George Pickens. So, I don't know. Tyreek Hill's not coming to the Texans. Let's do that. Engineer says Garrett Wilson's the only young wide receiver who could want out, but who knows the cost and if the Jets want to play ball. Got to imagine the Jets probably trying to hang on to him, and he's going to be one of the most expensive wide receivers in football here pretty soon when they do the contract extension with him. So, it's not going to be, from a price standpoint. Kurt Metz says Alec Pierce from the Indianapolis Colts. Probably not, just because he fits exactly like they need a tight end, but they've got Downs for the slot. They've got Pittman and Pierce for the outside. Like, he's kind of part of what they do. I'd take him. I wouldn't trade a second for him, but I'd take him. I like the Pierce coming out of Cincinnati. Diablo Valdez says, I really want SMU running back Brashard Smith or Texas running back Jaden Blue. Both would be pass catchers out of the backfield. I like Brashard Smith a lot more than Jaden Blue. Brashard Smith played wide receiver when he got started at Miami and then ultimately moved to running back. I like Brashard Smith a lot. If the Texans haven't drafted somebody in the first 2 days, I would love for them to trade into the 4th round to get Brashard Smith. And Herman's a smart man. He says, I would say no to Tyreek Hill. I would too. And so would the Houston Texans. Okay, a little housekeeping for you. 10:30, the locker room, Landry Locker. We'll give you enough time to go get you a refill on your drink and get ready for Landry Locker. Later this week, I will have the Google form for you to fill out so you can get stickers, Houston football sticker, S&L sticker, Era Good Vibes sticker, an Eat Good, Sleep Good, Be Good sticker, and the 2 one-time onlys. Okay? 2 one-time onlys. The Damn It Bobby and the Mad Cody sticker. Okay? So these will be available we'll do a Google form. We'll put it in the description. You'll fill it out. You got to give me your address. So, you give me your address and your name and all that kind of stuff, and then we'll send you the stickers. I got the little baggies so that they stay safe in transport, and we'll get those stickers starting to send out later this week as I get the Google form ready. You need to prioritize, mark off your calendar, whatever the phrasing is, 26th of this month. 26th of this month. The Saturday of the NFL draft, we will have a draft party for you. Finalizing the location this week. We will have that information out to you. You'll see it time and time again for the 26th, but make plans to come out and see us on the 26th and hang out for the draft party. So I'll have the stickers there for you as well. Now, if you want me to mail you a sticker, please don't ask for some more at the party. I got a limited number of these things. And again, I'm not charging you for the stickers. I just think they're fun. Put them on a water bottle or a notebook or something. So S&L this week, 4 p.m. I got some fun stuff planned for you later in the week. Landry Locker's coming your way here in a few minutes. We end the live streams the same way each and every time. With my hope for you, my charge for you as well. It's even important enough to me to get it made into a sticker. I want you to eat good. I want you to sleep good. I want you to be good. We'll talk Texans again soon. And this one's just for Patrick because I know he hip-hoppity, dip-doppity do. Appreciate you for watching. Landry Locker at 10:30. Eat good, sleep good, be good. We'll talk Texans again soon. Appreciate you.